Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
And welcome in, everybody. It's Sports Daily here on a Thursday on KFH. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage in for Jacob Albracht for the remainder of this week and all of next week. Jad Chambers producing the program for us. As always, the KFH hotline is officially open at 869-1240. Feel free to join the show. That hotline is pretty much open the majority of the 2 hours of our program today. Outside of at the top of the 10 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald. GoPowerCat.com. Fitz will join us to talk about, is there any chance for the Kansas State Wildcats to make the NCAA tourney? We will talk to him about that at the top of hour number 2 today. A lot to get to on the program. Glad that you are here with us today, Paul. Welcome in. Glad to have you here with us for the next several days here on the program.
You know, I love doing in studio with you guys. It's always so much fun. You know, people don't, I know technology makes everybody think, well, those guys can't be 3-4 feet apart. But a technology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Man, I'm still old school. There's nothing like sitting in a studio with a guy you like. You can, if we had a beer here, it would be just perfect. When we talk sports, 2-3 feet from each other is great. It's fun to be in studio.
So you're saying you like me? You enjoy my presence?
I do. I'm telling you right now, you're a great guy.
Yeah,
well, your mom made me say it. So anyway,
well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So for those of you that, if maybe you don't watch our video stream on a daily basis, which by the way, we are live and our camera is in a different position today. Paul, wave to the camera up there.
Everybody.
There we go. So
hello.
if you're on our video stream, Paul and I are in the same studio together. Typically the way that this show works with Jacob and I, we are in 2 different locations normally. And if you watch the video stream, you can tell that. You can see that, we are in 2 different locations normally. But today and for the majority of the time that you're filling in, you and I will be, I think, in the same studio. We won't be tomorrow, but we will be for a majority of next week.
Are you old school enough to remember the days that you'd go into a studio?
Sure.
You'd have a partner right there.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's the way it used to be.
Technology is at the point now where when we do the show in remote locations, you really can't tell the difference. Because of the sound quality and all of that. But there is something about, to your point that you mentioned, us sitting next to each other, feeding off of each other.
Right.
I think we can interrupt each other a little bit better than we could if we were in a remote location. Yeah, so it's good to be here with you in studio today, Paul. We mentioned that video stream. You can find us on the Sports Daily Facebook page, on the Sports Daily YouTube page, and also on Twitch if you are a Twitch viewer and watcher.
Speaking of remotes, is it too soon to promo our remote?
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know if that's actually going to happen.
I apologize. I apologize.
Yeah, I'll just tell.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'll tell our listeners we're working on something. We don't have it finalized yet, but we're working on a live broadcast to kick off March Madness. I can't tell you where. I can't tell you where we're working on. Hopefully, we can get it secured and done.
Okay,
but it would be a really cool way to kick off March Madness in a couple of weeks. Because keep in mind, Paul, our show runs from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that first 2 days of March Madness, all the games tip off at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
So our show would lead right into the games. And, hopefully we can get that secured. Regardless, our show will lead in to the games. But if we can be live on location around a bunch of people to cheer on all those games. And, it's the best, in my opinion, one of the best sports days of the year, that first day of March Madness. Because everybody has their brackets ready to go. They feel really good about it.
Right.
They feel like they're going to do really well. And then typically by, 2 p.m. on that first day, the majority of people's brackets are busted. But it's fun regardless. And so hopefully we'll have more details on that in the days to come. We want to get started on the program here today talking about, some of the major changes that came down yesterday with the Buffalo Bills. And we know that over the last several years, the Bills have been really one of the major threats and major competitors for Kansas City as they build this dynasty, as the Chiefs do. They've ran into the Buffalo Bills multiple times in that stretch, but it was kind of a bloodletting yesterday, Paul, in Buffalo, as many different players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, were cut, let go, restructured contracts, things like that. Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, others cut and released from the Buffalo Bills. And what makes it really intriguing, Paul, is that, a couple of those guys, like I just mentioned, White and Poyer, they're former all-pro players. And now they're out. Now they're not part of that organization anymore. And so relating it back to Patrick Mahomes, relating it back to the Chiefs and what they've done over the last 4 or 5 years, what is this signal, do you feel like? Is this simply just a cost-cutting move for Buffalo? Or is it something where maybe they're waving the white flag a little bit and saying, look, we tried to compete with Kansas City for this dynasty. We weren't able to get it done. Now we have to basically kind of build from the ground up again.
Right. What does waving a white flag mean to you? Because what it means to me is I give up. I'm being forced, literally forced to surrender. I wave the white flag. I like your terminology on that because they've got to make some cuts somewhere. And when you've got to cut a ton of money, where do you go? To where the money is.
Yeah.
And that's where these guys were. Last week, Jacob and I had a conversation. I think it was last week before you came in on the second hour. We had a conversation with regards to corners because, and this was regarding the tags. When everybody has to tag this guy or that guy, you got to tag them. Every team tags somebody, and for payroll. And when we were talking about that, the Chiefs tagged really, Snead very, very good, potentially one of the best corners. And we talked about, DBs and what they do. And it looks like to me, you released 2 of your great DBs. That hurts. It's got to hurt. And I'm sitting there thinking, why are we doing that? Well, that's where the money is. That's where the money is that they figure that they have to, shell or shed to get under the cap. And there's a lot. I didn't realize they were that far over the cap, but they were a bunch over the cap. And so you take 2 DBs on one of the best defenses in the NFL and you cut them and you waive them and you make them free agents. Tommy, that's got, there's no sugarcoating this. If you're sports talk radio guy in Buffalo right now, there's no sugarcoating this. And you're telling the fans this hurts. Now we'll replace them.
Right.
But I mean, these are all pro kind of guys. And but you cut those guys because that's where the money is. And there is a ton over the cap.
Well, to your point, they saved over $36 million against the salary cap.
That's right.
With these moves that they made yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what, Paul?
But they had to.
They absolutely had to. And they had to make those cuts somewhere. And that's why, it goes back to that conversation about a team's window. And, and is that such a thing? Is that a real thing? And I think it is. As you're constructing a team, if you're going all in, if you're giving large contracts, you've got sort of a window of opportunity in a lot of cases to win and, win in that time frame before rent comes due, before they've got to pay the bill on that, before they've got to try to figure something out. Here's the thing, Paul. The Kansas City Chiefs have an opportunity to do one of the most hilarious things that they could ever do. And I don't know if they're going to do it.
No.
I don't know if they're going to do it.
I know what you're going to say.
But I think that they should. Let's go back to 2017. The Kansas City Chiefs made a trade with the Buffalo Bills right before the NFL draft to trade up and select a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes. That pick was the Buffalo Bills pick. They got that pick from the Buffalo Bills. And I think the Bills have been haunted ever since that time from Kansas City because the Chiefs traded up with them to get Patrick Mahomes. One of the picks that the Chiefs traded away to get that pick that ended up being Patrick Mahomes, you know who the Bills used it to draft?
Don't tell me.
Tre'Davious White.
There you go. There's a little irony.
He is now on the market. He was cut yesterday by the Buffalo Bills, former All-Pro. I know he's had some injury issues and things like that over the course of his career. The Chiefs are in need, it looks like, for a defensive back because they tagged L'Jarius Sneed, and it looks like they're probably going to trade him. Could they sign Tre'Davious White? Could they go out there and pick up a former All-Pro that was just cut by the Buffalo Bills and pick up the guy that they traded that pick away to pick up Patrick Mahomes in the 2017 draft?
That is
They could end up with both Mahomes and Tre'Davious White, and then it looks like that 2017 draft, we already know they were winners in that, but they could be even larger winners. How hilarious would that be if they decided to sign him? Irony
all over the place. I don't know where you got that tidbit or how you figured that out, but that was fantastic. Irony is all over this type of deal, isn't it? And of course, here again, just the fact that, you cut 2 premier defensive backs. And I'll just inform everybody what we talked about last week with Jacob and I, just very briefly. And that is, defensive backs are so important. When you have a corner, you can lock down the best receiver on an opposing football team.
Yeah.
You're now playing 10 on 10. And whenever you play 10 on 10, advantage goes to who? Goes to the defense.
Yep.
And it's a huge factor. And the fact that we're talking this much about defensive backs has to show you just how important they are. And yes, but what irony that would be. Now, age factor, I mean, it's been 7 years. I mean, you get to a point where are you at? And I don't know where they are physically and whether that had something to do with it. But you're a defensive back. He should at his age be able to still be able to get what, another 4 or 5 years?
I think so. I mean, he's 29.
29.
He's 29.
3 to 5 years, maybe. Okay.
And so when they cut him, that ended up saving the Bills, just him alone, over $2 million in salary cap space and $6.2 million in dead money. Of course, like I mentioned, he was that first round pick back in 2017. He was with the Bills for 7 years, 2 Pro Bowls. He was an All-Pro in 2019. Like I mentioned, the injury bug bit him over the last 3 years. He ended last season with a torn Achilles.
Right.
So he's coming off of that. And, so there are obviously injury concerns with any team that wants to pick him up. And I think that you also have to, keep in mind how he would potentially fit in a Steve Spagnuolo system in a defensive scheme. But I mean, the timing of all of this, look, if they are going to ship out L'Jarius Sneed and try to get a return, whether that's in draft capital, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as the show goes on, what they end up doing with L'Jarius Sneed, there could potentially be an opening for a cornerback.
Hope not.
There could be.
Well, I hope not.
Well,
yes.
I think it's going back to the Sneed. I mean, I think we'd all love to keep him, but I'm not sure that the Chiefs are going to be willing to invest in the kind of money that Sneed would get on the open market.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and so I think that, a trade is probably likely, knowing Brett Veach, because at that point he'll get some value in return. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
If they can get value in return for a player the caliber of L'Jarius Sneed at a time when he's going to garner quite a bit of money on the open market, that's probably the direction that they're going to want to go. I would love to see him stay in Kansas City. I've made that very clear. Him teaming up with Trent McDuffie to make one of the best secondaries in the National Football League, if not the best secondary in the NFL. That's hard to duplicate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be a clear downgrade going from L'Jarius Sneed to a guy like Tre'Davious White.
I mean, it's going to be a downgrade to almost anybody in the NFL that you were to trade for or to sign. It's going to be a downgrade because, Sneed's just that good with that much upside.
Well, he's a lockdown corner.
Lockdown corner.
And
you play him man. You can play him man.
And all season long, Steve Spagnuolo put Sneed against the number one receiver on the opposition almost every single week and locked him down most times throughout the course of the season.
And of course, and Jacob and I talked about, when you have that situation where you can play man, if you can play man on both corners and lock down those receivers, your world of opportunity to do things with blitzes and stunts and whatever and angles and move people, move people around, and your world becomes so full, and it becomes so many opportunities to be able to do things if you're a coordinator. And when you have but here's the thing, you can't do those things unless you can play some man. I know you got a zone blitz, but you can't zone blitz every time. You've got to be able to lock some people down, play man. And that's part of why, Spags was looking so good and everybody's singing his praises. Mm-hmm. He's been given the opportunity with the ability to lock down quarters to be able to do things imaginatively in terms of blitz packages and those kind of things, bringing people from here, from there, whatever he wants to do. And it's made him look really smart. But you can't do that unless you can lock down corners and play man.
Right. And I think that going back to last season and the way that defense played out for Spags, it all started with the secondary. And there are some defenses that you look at the D-line, for example, and that everything is kind of built around the D-line or the linebackers.
Well, you got to. Yeah, you got to.
But I really think that last season it was different, where I think that the success that the secondary and specifically the corners and Sneed and McDuffie had in locking down those top receivers, at that point, like to your point, everything else defensively flowed out of that because it allowed Spags to, like you mentioned, do some creative things and work, a certain way with the linebackers.
Correct.
Chris Jones is phenomenal. And I think he dropped off a little bit last season. Wasn't quite as
nicked
dominant
up a little bit
from the start to finish.
Right.
I think in the fourth quarter, his stats in games were
Right.
significantly better than early in ball games. And that's fine. He's getting a little bit older, but I don't think that the defense centered necessarily around Chris Jones and the defensive line last season.
Yeah, not
where
as much
maybe
as I
in
thought
seasons
it would be.
past
Yeah.
it had.
Yeah.
It really centered around the corners. And
Right.
so if they're going to move out L'Jarius Sneed, I feel like you don't tag him and you don't have a conversation with him where both sides are open to a trade possibility, unless you're more than likely going to move him.
Right.
I think it's unlikely he returns. If you're going to do that, I don't know if any cornerback that you are either going to bring in, or I know they've got some guys on the bench that they could elevate. Mike Edwards is one. I think there's Chamari Connor is one. There's a couple of other guys in the secondary that could get more play with L'Jarius Sneed out. But I don't know if regardless, if it's an internal replacement or an external replacement, if Spags will have the luxury to have everything flow from the secondary next season. Right. I think we're going to probably see maybe some differences with the way that defense is operated next season. And it could be, they could take a swing at a Tre'Davious White, who got cut yesterday by the Buffalo Bills. That he sort of seems to me like a guy that Brett Veach would salivate over. Somebody that formerly had a lot of success, made Pro Bowls, was an all-pro selection, and then had some injuries, got cut, and you could probably bring him in for pennies on the dollar.
Right. That's possible. And here's why. And I'm trying to put myself into his head, what he would be thinking. So if I go to the Kansas City Chiefs, one, I've got some good edge rush. I've got some great push in the middle. We're going to disrupt quarterbacks is what I'm trying to say. There's going to be a certain amount of disruption at the quarterback position for whoever the Chiefs play, just based upon the ability of that front. A great defensive line increases interceptions for DBs because it forces a quarterback to throw early. It throws him, maybe he's out of the pocket, maybe he has to step into the pocket. He's concerned about pass rush. He's got out of peripheral vision, he's seeing, a defensive end, squeeze the pocket. I mean, whatever it case, and you throw a pass that you don't want. You want passes rushed. You want passes thrown before they're supposed to be. As a defensive back, this is how you get interceptions. That's how you get interceptions. Quarterbacks in the NFL are so darn good that without being rushed, without having a problem of seeing over D linemen or feeling the pressure, they can be pretty darn good, as and complete a lot of passes. But when they're pressured, when they have to get out of their comfort zone, boy, is that a great opportunity for defensive backs. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that many Hall of Fame defensive backs in Canton, Ohio, had pretty good fronts in front of them.
Yeah.
Pretty good fronts in front of them, and pressured and made quarterbacks throw passes they didn't want. And that's part of the reason. That's part of the way I like this is setting up. Well, I'll tell you, and if you're a guy like White, you look at this thing and you go, man, I might want to be there. I don't have that many years left. And by the way, how many Super Bowls so far in a row? 2? Would that be 2?
Yep.
How about 3?
Yep.
3's possible. They haven't, disassembled this machine that is the Kansas City Chiefs yet. They've got a couple problems. I mean, it's not dismantled. And maybe that's where I want to go play whatever years I got left. Why not go win a Super Bowl or 2?
Well, look, and knowing, I mean, this guy's been with the Bills his entire career. So he's been on the other side of all the times that Kansas City has crushed Buffalo's spirits in the playoffs.
That's correct.
And sent them home. And so that could be a motivating factor for a guy like Tre'Davious White to come back from a torn Achilles and try to make another run at it with the team. It's like, if you can't beat them, join them. Is the old saying. So I wouldn't be opposed if the price is right for Brett Veach to try to go out there and snag a guy like Tre'Davious White, and then all of the storylines and everything around that. I mean, if it's a low risk,
if he
high reward type scenario, I would be okay with that.
now physicality, we're talking about all things. We're
He's got to
assuming
be
that
healthy.
He's got to be healthy. He's got to be able to play and that kind of thing.
Yeah, he's got to be healthy. And
Yeah.
you know what? I know that there have been a number of teams that have reached out to the Chiefs about trading for L'Jarius Sneed.
Oh, I can imagine.
One of those teams that I read a report yesterday, the Indianapolis Colts are interested in L'Jarius Sneed. They also, the Colts, placed the franchise tag just a couple of days ago on their top receiver, Michael Pittman Jr.
That's right. That's who they put it on.
I don't know how realistic it is. Could you make a straight-up trade, L'Jarius Sneed for Michael Pittman Jr.? Because then you've got a top-tier wide receiver in that Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver room.
I feel like you're getting something of value for being made to trade Sneed. You got to. Let's go get some. If that's the case,
you could get some good
you're
value
thinking outside the box there. You're thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
But maybe Indianapolis with the tag deal, they say, well, we won't be able to get him next year. Here, let's get some value from him.
It's going to be incredibly entertaining to watch and see how all of this plays out. The official league year begins next week. I believe it's Wednesday, March 13th. And at that point, free agents can then begin talking to other teams and signing and things like that.
Oh, I like the way you were thinking on that. I kind of like that, Tommy. That's not bad.
We'll see how it all plays out. An intriguing time when it comes to one of the main rivals of the Kansas City Chiefs over the last several years. We're just getting started here on a Thursday edition of Sports Daily. We'll be right back. We'll come back and talk a little college basketball. It's on the way for you next. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers, 8 Sports Daily. We'll be right back. Well, so we had a comment on our video stream just a few moments ago, right before we went to break. Kind of following up on that conversation about the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, talking about L'Jarius Sneed, the franchise tag, what the Chiefs are going to do. Rick on our video stream comments that based off of my suggestion that maybe the Chiefs ought to try to work out a trade with the Indianapolis Colts for Michael Pittman Jr. Rick comments that, in his opinion, a number one wide receiver is worth more than a number one cornerback. You know what? I don't know your thoughts on this, Paul. I absolutely disagree with that. I think that the value of a shutdown corner is absolutely higher than the value of a number one wide receiver, because I think there are a lot of wide receivers out there. Now, are there a lot of number ones? No, probably not. But the Chiefs are a perfect example of a team that didn't necessarily need a number one wide receiver last year, and they won a championship. They had to have the lockdown cornerback in L'Jarius Sneed to shut down the opposition's number one wide receiver. So I think the value of a L'Jarius Sneed, of a number one cornerback, is going to be a lot higher, in my opinion, than a number one wide receiver.
Well, and here's the thing, and I agree with you on that without question, because having been around football as much as I've been around, great corners are hard to find. I mean, they are hard to find. And you can do a lot of things if you don't have that great corner, you got to play zone. You just got to. I mean, the great ones play man and become very, very valuable. But so I get Rick's point, and Rick to a certain extent is right. Is right to the point where great receivers make great plays at times, unbelievable plays to extend drives, to score, whatever the case might be. And great receivers are so valuable. Of course they are. And great receivers make you do things in a defensive secondary that maybe you don't want to do. Maybe you don't want to have to bracket. Maybe you don't want to top them off. Maybe there's all kinds of things that you may or may not want to do when you have a great receiver and they line him up at the Z. Are you kidding? Or how about a Kelsey? What about, they line him up as an A or wherever they want. Well, wherever they want to line up Kelsey, he can be an XYZ A. It doesn't matter. Tight end, doesn't matter. And, it's tough. And you're right. Great receivers are valuable. Man, those lockdown court, they're so hard to find.
They are.
They're hard to find. They're just not everywhere.
And do I think it's realistic that the Chiefs and the Colts would do a straight up 1-to-1 trade between L'Jarius Sneed and Michael Pittman? Probably not.
Well, I don't know. I don't know the money
Probably.
aspect.
Well,
maybe. I don't understand.
Well, both players are on the franchise tag.
Well, they are. You're on a tag.
They're
You're on a
both on the
tag.
franchise tag.
You're on a tag. That's right.
I think it would come down to the value of what each position is getting from the franchise tag.
I got you.
And that value changes.
I got you.
The value of a quarterback on the franchise tag and what a team has to pay that quarterback is different than, a defensive lineman, for example. So the values are different from position to position. So I don't think it's likely that they would just make a straight up trade.
I got you.
But I would imagine that there could be a scenario where they are able to build off that 1-to-1 trade, potentially. I don't know if it's realistic. And I know that there are a lot of teams that have inquired about L'Jarius Sneed. Why wouldn't you?
Why not?
If you're a team that you've got a need on the defensive side of the ball, honestly, Paul, and I wasn't intending for us to get down this rabbit hole talking about L'Jarius Sneed today, but I think it's an intriguing discussion because one of the teams in my mind that I think would be a perfect fit for L'Jarius Sneed if the Chiefs want to move him, the Detroit Lions. I think the Lions would be a phenomenal team to bring in L'Jarius Sneed if they're willing to pay him.
A lot of guys want to play for Dan Campbell.
They want to play for Dan Campbell.
They want to play for Dan Campbell.
They are right on the cusp of being a legitimate championship contender in the NFC.
They are.
I think they get after it defensively in a really physical way, which is something that L'Jarius Sneed does. Mm-hmm. That's maybe the only knock on a guy like L'Jarius Sneed is that he gets penalized because he's aggressive. He goes after it. But that's just one of the things that he brings to the table.
Right.
I think that fits in really nicely with what the Lions are trying to build, that physicality culture with Dan Campbell.
That's right.
And so, and really, if you look back on the Lions season, what was the Achilles heel for Detroit last year? Their defense. They couldn't stop anybody, especially down the stretch, right? They get into the playoffs, that game that was the NFC Championship game against the Niners, they jumped out to a huge lead where you thought, okay, this is a team that's going to the Super Bowl, and then here come the Niners, and the Lions can't stop them defensively. And the Niners get right back into the game and ultimately win it. They could use a lockdown number one cornerback like L'Jarius Sneed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how interested the Lions are, and I don't know how interested the Chiefs would be in making a move like that. But I could see that being a really solid fit for a guy like Sneed.
Well, there's options. I mean, I guess the good news out of this whole thing is as there's options with regards to the Kansas City Chiefs and their situation. It depends on, what advantage they take out of this particular situation.
Yeah.
But you're being dealt a card that you got to deal with. I mean, and what you do with it, and I don't know what they're going to do with it yet. None of us really know what's going to happen yet. But the options are interesting, aren't they?
They're out there.
They're out there.
And as I mentioned, that league year kicks off next week on Wednesday. And that's the time, at least, when free agents can begin to sign contracts with other teams. And there are a lot of, it's not just the Bills. A lot of teams, a lot of players are making changes and making moves. And it always happens this time of year where teams are trying to shed salary cap where they can. They're trying to make moves. And, obviously earlier this week, the Russell Wilson news with the Broncos, definitely the biggest one, biggest one out of all of them. And now it looks like the Broncos are willing to allow Wilson to talk with teams prior to the league year beginning next Wednesday.
Right.
So I think they're open to letting him move now. If he's, if he wants to jump in there and find a deal with another team, that they're willing to make that happen even before the league year kicks off.
Right. And he's going to have a lot of his salary paid by the Broncos. I'm not sure how all of that works.
Right.
But it sounds like Russell Wilson might be a bargain to somebody.
He will.
If you need a quarterback, he may be, that bargain basement type deal where you get Now, obviously, Sean Payton doesn't, he doesn't have an appreciation for the skill set that Russell Wilson now possesses. And I don't know if that's age. I don't know if maybe they just can't get along together. I don't know what the situation is. However, I do know this, that the Broncos are going to eat a bunch of salary, and it's going to be a bargain for somebody. And you take an Atlanta, for instance. Would Atlanta be a great place for Russell Wilson?
I think it would be.
I think it could be.
I think it would be.
Make
no mistake about it. Russell Wilson, although he was not good overall in his tenure in Denver, he had some flashes, but overall was a downgrade from when he was in Seattle and made all those Pro Bowls and won a championship. Make no mistake about it. There will be a market for Russell Wilson to find a landing spot, to probably be a starter in the NFL.
That's right.
Because there are going to be teams that are going to see him as a bargain. They can get him for not much money, and he could potentially be a bridge to the future for a number of teams. And there was some speculation that the Panthers could potentially be a team that would look at bringing him in. That was shut down by their new head coach, Dave Canales. But Canales and Russell Wilson worked together in Seattle for a number of years, so they were familiar with one another. And the speculation was, man, Bryce Young could maybe use a mentor and could use a guy like Russell Wilson to come in, and you could sit Young and have him learn under Wilson and then have a bridge to the future. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen in a place like Carolina.
Maybe I'm naive, Tommy, because I was thinking more of a team that needs a quarterback, period. I mean, not mentoring. I'm not talking about that. I was talking about a team. And the reason I threw out Atlanta is because in every conversation that you have with anybody about a team that needs a quarterback, Atlanta seems to be the one that everybody, cites. And I used Atlanta because, if you want a chance to play in this league and be successful in this league, you got to have yourself a quarterback. Russell Wilson would be that one guy that would give you a shot. Because let's face it, what if, you're going to take somebody in a draft and then make a player out of them off the get-go? That doesn't happen very often. It happens every once in a while. Brock Purdy might be as close to that as you can see.
But if you're going to be if you're an NFL team and you are looking for a quarterback to win you a championship,
right?
If you are a quarterback away from a championship,
I know what you're going to say. Yep. Go ahead.
It's not going to be Russell Wilson.
I could see that coming.
He did it in the past, but he's not going to do it in the future. So you have to be willing to, I think you have to understand what he will bring you. Could he bring you a bridge to the future? Sure. Could he improve a team that needs improving? Sure. Is he going to win a championship? Probably not.
But you're going to have Colorado paying a lot of his salary for you. So I think that's the pot. And I don't know how all that
he'd be
works.
A bargain. Yeah,
he'd be a bargain.
Absolutely be a bargain.
Something, when you use the word bargain, I look at it as maybe that's a risk worth taking. If I'm looking at it, maybe it's, because I'm not going to invest a lot of money in him. I mean, he's going to, we're going to do what he's got. And even if he walked away, the irony is if he walked away from football today, wasn't it like reports of upper 40s, 40 up in the upper 40s?
It was a lot
in terms of millions.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. It was stunning.
And now we're looking at, potential where a team might sign Russell Wilson for the league minimum. Can you believe that?
No, I can't believe that.
That could be on the table. But
I can't believe that.
There will be a market for him.
Somebody's going to take it.
I think teams need to be realistic on why they would want to bring in a Russell Wilson.
By the way,
and to win you a championship, that's probably not why.
I don't have a feel for would he be a mentor type guy. For instance, Brett Favre was no mentor.
Right.
Brett Favre,
Aaron Rodgers was no mentor.
And Aaron Rodgers, well, he learned from Brett Favre.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is, do you think he'd be a great mentor? I don't know.
Ben Roethlisberger was publicly saying that he was not there to be a mentor.
That's right.
In Pittsburgh.
He did say that.
There are players
I remember that.
They're not good at that sort of thing. That's a question mark, and that would have to be the due diligence that teams would need to do before they bring in Russell Wilson. But if I'm Wilson, I'm going to tell any team I would absolutely be a mentor because he wants to remain a starter. He wants to have a gig in the NFL. Yeah. So it's going to be intriguing to see where he lands and where all of these players land once the league year starts next week. That's our football talk for the day. We're going to get into some college basketball, Big 12 news from some games last night as we get into the final weekend of the regular season. That's on the way after this on Sports Daily.
FH.
Hey, just a reminder for college basketball fans, specifically Jayhawk, Wildcat, and Shocker fans, you can find exactly the content that you want on the free Odyssey app. Download the app, search for KFH, choose your favorite show, like Sports Daily, for example, and browse episodes for the content that you want. Next week, the conference championship, especially for the Big 12, American Conference, all of that, getting ready for March Madness. And of course, we'll have a ton of content as we get into not only the conference championship, but the NCAA tournament as well. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, and Jad Chambers with you on Sports Daily here this morning on KFH. The KFH hotline open at 869-1240. And we are into March, Paul. We're ramping things up. The final regular season for both conferences, for the American Conference, for the Big 12 Conference, happening this weekend before we get into conference tournament season. And yesterday for the Big 12, kind of an interesting way that everything played out. Houston, they were able to get another win. They are continue to be in first place in the Big 12. They beat UCF on the road by 8. Iowa State right behind them. They get a home win by 5 points over BYU, who is ranked right inside the top 25. It sets up a couple of interesting scenarios for this weekend. The Jayhawks go on the road to Houston to wrap up the regular season for the Big 12. We know KU's not winning the Big 12. They're out of it at this point. But now we're looking at seeding for the Big 12 tournament and going on the road, beating Houston. And then if the Jayhawks can make a really decent run in the Big 12 tournament, there is a possibility that we could be, again, talking about the Jayhawks maybe sneaking into that one line for the NCAA tournament. More than likely, it's probably going to be a 2 or maybe a 3, but they've got to have a good showing not only this weekend, but next week if they want to kind of remain on that 3 line for the NCAA tournament.
You're right. And both Kansas teams in the Big 12 have a big game at home. One is at home and one is at
Kansas
Houston.
State plays at home against Iowa State.
That's big.
Yeah.
Because, we were talking about, this just yesterday before I think you came into the room, maybe you were in the room. We were talking about the fact that when you look at K-State, they're that bubble team. But they're not being mentioned as a bubble team all of a sudden. They've dropped out.
I think they may be off the bubble.
They may be off the bubble. We have not seen much talk about them at all in the last day or two as a bubble team. But can you get the attention? And I threw this to Jacob yesterday. Can you get the attention of the committee if you beat Iowa State at home and then you get to the finals? If you can get as far as to the finals, maybe not win the finals, does that kind of help you with your case to go into the big dance? Because I think it could.
Yeah,
I think that could get them in, and that could take you right from no bubble talk right into maybe the last 4 in. Possibly.
That's a conversation, and that's a question that I know that Tim Fitzgerald at the top of the next hour we'll get his insight on it, because I don't know the answer to that. I think that as of now, they are firmly out of the NCAA tournament. Firmly out. And looking, by the way, Joe Lunardi, and everybody follows Joey Brackets this time of year. And this was less than 24 hours ago. I've not seen an update from him since last night's games, but less than 24 hours ago, he doesn't have Kansas State anywhere around the bubble. They're not in the first 4 out. They're not in the next 4 out. They're not in the last 4 in. So they're out. As of right now, they are solidly out. You cannot afford a couple of things. Number one, if you're the Wildcats, you cannot afford a loss at home to Iowa State. Keep in mind, Iowa State, they're really, really good, and they still have an opportunity to win the Big 12. They could get into at least a share of the Big 12 with Houston if they win and Houston loses this weekend. So Iowa State has a lot to play for on the road at Kansas State this weekend. So that's going to be a huge challenge for the Wildcats. That's number one. The Wildcats can't afford to lose that game at home this weekend. And number two, they cannot afford an early exit in the Big 12 tournament. If that happens, they are not making it to the NCAA tournament. And I wonder, and I'm going to ask Fitz this, so we can both ask him this in our next segment. Is the only path for the Wildcats to win the Big 12 tournament? Is that the only way that they get into the NCAA tournament and get that automatic bid? It might very well be. I don't know if the Wildcats win all their games up until the championship game for the Big 12 tournament, if at that point they would be an at-large. I think it's going to be tough for them, but we'll get more insight on that from Fitz in the next hour. Going back to Kansas very quickly, Paul, the same sort of, layout for what the Jayhawks are playing for. They're on the road at Houston on Saturday. We'll talk more about that tomorrow and preview that game. As of right now, again, looking at Joe Lunardi's brackets, he's got KU on the 3 line as the number 11 seed. I think that it would be potentially possible, not saying it's probable, but my opinion would be that it would be possible that if they win at Houston on Saturday and potentially they win the Big 12 tournament, they could find their way, sneaking up into that 1 line. More than likely, probably a 2, but that could be on the table for them.
Right. And yesterday we had talked that there were 9 teams. It looked like 9 teams going in.
Correct.
I'm not sure yet. I mean, we'll find out a lot.
I think it'll be 9. I mean, I think that number is
9?
probably what the committee is comfortable with. That 10th team is probably Kansas State at this point. And I'm not sure, again, like going back to the Wildcats, I'm not sure there would be another team that they could leapfrog. The committee just may have to be willing to give a 10th team an entry into the tournament. And I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that.
Right.
It makes that decision that much more difficult. But for Wildcat fans, basically all you can control, if you're the Wildcats, just to win as many games as you can between now and the end of the conference tournament.
Boy, do I want to talk to Tim Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah.
I've got some questions. And you do too, yeah. I know. Yeah.
The best case scenario, you win the conference tournament and you take it out of the hands of the committee. At that point, the committee doesn't get to choose your fate for you.
Well, that would be nice.
You get that auto bid. I don't know how likely that is.
I don't know.
We'll get into that with Tim Fitzgerald on the other side to kick off hour number 2. He will be joining us on the KFH hotline at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. We'll do that next. I'm Tommy Castor along with Paul Savage and Jad Chambers. It's Sports Daily on a Thursday. We'll be right back.
Radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
Your new radio home for K-State Athletics, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. It's that time, Sports.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Sports Daily here on a Thursday. Tommy Castor and Paul Savage on the KFH hotline. Our buddy Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com. Fitz, I'll tell you right off the start that if you were here in person with us, I would give you the longest handshake that I possibly could. It would not be a blow by, it would not be a flyby, whatever that language is. It would be a nice, hearty handshake. I just want you to know that's how much I care about you.
Oh my gosh! I would just turn it into like a guy hug, and then I'd sniff your hair.
Let's start there, Fitz. I mean, it's handshake gate. It's a couple of days old at this point. We've got both fan bases going back and forth about this. I saw you posted a couple of videos last night about it. I guess my takeaway on all of this is I don't want these two coaches to be friends. I don't want these two programs to be buddies. They're in-state rivals. So I'm fine with this. I'm fine with a little bit of fire between these two teams and programs. They shouldn't like each other.
No, look, every coach that is kind of mad about how his team plays does the drive-by. You can see it in almost every game. The losing coach does the drive-by. I'm getting through this line as quick as possible, and I'm going to go be mad at my team. Because Bill Self did the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe the skin-to-skin contact had a 25% more ratio. I mean, what are we doing here? The whole topic is stupid. The way fans are worked up about it is stupid. Every coach does it. I don't know why Coach Self brought it up. I have no clue. He was asked about it, but you don't have to answer. It's not a deposition.
Yeah. We had a discussion. We had a discussion yesterday on the show. Jacob and myself and Paul, all three of us, talked a little bit about the way that this rivalry has grown and sort of the ebbs and flows from it. And the program was down at the end of Bruce Weber's time there, and Jerome Tang has built up more optimism. I know it's been off and on this season, and it hasn't always been amazing for the Wildcats. But one of the points that Jacob made, and he's not here today to talk about it, but he brought up about how in his mind, he believes that maybe part of the frostiness is because of how good of a recruiter Jerome Tang is. And now there might be scenarios where these two programs are competing for recruits where maybe a few years ago they might not have been. Do you put any stock into that? Do you think that's fair? Or is this basically just a frosty relationship because it's Bill Self and he's always had a frosty relationship with Kansas State?
I think it's a lot of things. And when he brought that up, honestly, I think there was a level of finding a way to make my team feel disrespected after kicking the crap out of our, in-state rival. Because I think he was talking to his team to get them ready for Houston, to try to get them fired up, us against everyone. But I don't know, man, this is silly. Drive-by handshake. Yeah, it happens every damn game, Coach. You do it too.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
Yeah, and I can tell you this, Tim, having been a football coach over 30 years, there are times I've lost games. I don't want to shake their hand. I don't like them. I don't want anything to do with them. But you know what I do? I do it. Go do it. You got to do it. Now, do I carry on a conversation and ask how the wife and the kids are? No, of course not. But I shake their hand, and I don't want to. And as far as I'm concerned, you go through the process. There's nothing in the rule book that says it has to be a long, hearty handshake and look each other in the eye. And the fact that you're in the line shows that you're honoring the game. You're honoring the game. You don't have to like the outcome. And most of the time, frustration with a losing basketball coach at the level K-State is, most of the time, it's not with officiating. It's not with the opposing team. A lot of times, you're frustrated with your own play, with your own effort, with your own with what went good, your own ability to defend and make shots and all that stuff. That's what you're frustrated with. You're not at most of the time. I'm saying most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, that's what it is. But the fact that a guy does it and he goes through the line, and whether it's basically giving them 5 and getting through the line, you're doing what you got to do because you're respecting the game. And not only that, you're showing these kids, I'm going through this line. You're going to go through this line. I don't want to go through this line, but you're going to because I'm going. And that's what sportsmanship is all about. That's a lesson that will serve you later in life very well. But there's a lot been made out of this, Tim, that I'm not sure that anybody who really understands the game, understands what it's all about.
Yeah, Paul, you nailed it. It really, I don't think, had anything to do with the KU coaches. I've never heard on post-game radio or in the post-game Jerome Tang kind of go after his own team like that. He's always the coach who takes the blame, but he didn't see the effort, and he saw bad body language.
That's
and
right.
I'm telling you what, one thing I have known about Jerome Tang since the first press conference at Kansas State is he's a big believer in positive body language. And if he sees negative body language, it makes him angry. And he was really angry with the team and how they just kind of folded up in that game. And that's what it was about. His team was in a position where they really needed to come out and have a huge road victory. And he watched them just kind of fall apart after about 5 minutes of the game. He was mad at his guys, really mad.
What do you attribute that to, Fitz, as far as the lack of effort? I mean, is it indicative of a larger problem moving forward for the Wildcats? Or do you think there was some of it where they're inside Allen Fieldhouse and it's always a rough environment for any opposing team, but especially an in-state rival? Was it just kind of folding under that kind of pressure? Or I heard you kind of answer there real quickly. Is it indicative of a larger problem?
I think it is with this group. I just don't think he has enough alphas, enough dogs, enough true natural leaders that people want to follow. And look, they got rattled with the Iowa State crowd. They've gotten rattled at other places. This team just is missing some ingredients. And I compared this on our podcast yesterday. Like, they left ingredients out of the cake. And now the cake is flat and awful. They just didn't get that point guard they really needed, and Tyler Perry's had to play that role. And but from day one with this team, Jerome Tang's talked about we need a natural leader to emerge. I just don't think there is one. I think Tyler Perry's trying. So when he gets bad body language and lays down on the road, which he did after 3 great games, he just did not compete. He got frustrated and shut down. And when he sees that happen, he's just mattered. And heck, but the good news for K-State is, I want to pivot, is that he played the young guys finally. He just let them go play. And guys, the 3 true freshmen were good. K-State scored 68 points, and 25 of them were from the young guys. And I think I'll be interested to see what the playing mix is on Saturday, because you really want to beat Iowa State's another rival. You got them at home. You don't want to lose another home game, no matter what the context of the season is. So I'll be interested to see what he does. But I've been saying for a good month, mix these young guys in. If you're going to get mistakes, you're going to get boneheaded plays, do it with young guys that'll learn from it, not old guys who never did learn from it. And that's kind of where this team's at this year. It's time to hit the reset. It'll be interesting to see how many transfer portal pickups they go for, because that means a lot of guys went into the portal. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, and I think most K-Staters are ready for the offseason. I don't know. If they get an invite to the NIT, they'll take it. If they get a home game, don't expect a very big crowd. The fans have just kind of reached their end of this season, and I think a lot of people are hoping that end comes in Kansas City, particularly if they lose on Saturday.
Well, I felt like, to your point about the young players, I thought Day-Day Ames had some nice flashes. I thought Will McNair, looked pretty good at times. You mentioned Tyler Perry, and of course, struggled big time on Tuesday night. As far as talking about a leader and maybe an alpha, I don't know what his personality is. I thought Arthur Kaluma early in the game kind of took over. I mean, he was assertive in shooting. He was assertive in his action. That kind of went away as the game went on. Again, I don't know his personality, but in your mind, is there opportunities for Arthur Kaluma to take a game over moving forward?
That kind of asserted play has to be more often than not for Arthur. He scored 9 points. I think when K-State had that, was a 15-5 lead? That's not right. 15-10 lead,
Yeah.
whatever it was. Arthur had 9 of those. Arthur finished with 10. So, people said, well, K's defense took away Tyler Perry. I'm like, okay, that's smart because he's been red hot. He was shooting 62% from 3 over the last 3 games. He was cooking. So that's smart. But then they're like, well, they took away Kaluma. Well, they took away everything. And I go, it's not possible to take away everything. There has to be something there. And I just saw the K-State players kind of back down. And the freshmen were young and dumb. Let's just go play. Granted, the game was out of hand, and KU didn't have to value every possession at the same level they did. But I saw guys moving the ball, looking for open shots, and being definitive in what they do with the ball once they decide to either drive or shoot. And that's a positive sign for the future. And I kind of hope on Saturday we see more of it.
Well, you've brought up some interesting things that I hadn't really quite thought about. And the fact is that you've kind of said that, you're not sure where this team is with regards to its own personality and that kind of thing. I think that's what you're saying. I guess my question is there even a chance that this team makes the NCAA? Because Tommy and I have different views on what it's going to take for this team to get into the big dance. Tommy thinks it has to win the tournament outright. Tommy, is that about what you're thinking?
Yeah, and to follow up, and I think a way to phrase this question that I think would be really interesting to hear your thoughts on, Fitz. What do you think is a more likely scenario for the Wildcats? For them to win the Big 12 tournament, or for them to not win the Big 12 tournament and to somehow find a way to get an at-large bid from the committee in the NCAA tournament?
Right. By the way, we're assuming, Fitz, that obviously a must-win against Iowa State at home. That's that.
You have to win that one.
They got to win it. That's the scenario, though.
I guess in a world in which everything else goes pretty much to script. There's no upsets of teams winning their tournaments that adds a bid to another conference. I'm guessing if you win Saturday, you don't have to play in that first round of Kansas City, which I actually think is good. I know counting wins, but I don't think a win over West Virginia helps you any. In fact, it might impact your net rating negatively.
Right. Yeah.
I think getting into that second round, and if you catch a really good program and win, and then catch another really good program and win, I guess there's a scenario where you get in. But I'm with you, Tommy. I think this team has to win the tournament at this point. And look, if you're going to win the tournament, I can't see you losing on Saturday at home.
Right.
After back. So we're talking about a team going on a 5-game winning streak.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it possible. The reality of the situation is Cincinnati's loss last night pretty much locks the Big 12 in, barring someone pulling the upset in the tournament, to 9 teams in the tournament. And that's great. That's impressive. They flirted with 10. Cincinnati didn't quite get over the hump with it, or Kansas State. So now we spin and look at the NIT, and the NIT's changed how they're picking teams completely. Every Power 6 basketball conference will get the 2 highest rated teams in the net ratings as automatic bids that will host games. And there will be, of course, 16 hosting teams. That's 12 right there. And then there's, how many ever at-large bids to fill out the bracket. And K-State's net rating is behind Cincinnati and UCF, so they won't even be one of the automatic bids. They go into the pool of at-large, and their net rating's so weak, they might get in as a 7 or 8 seed in the NIT. And I asked, is that really something you want to do? I mean, is perpetuating this season, unless you just flat out say, we're going to play this with the young guys. Any of you old guys that are going to be moving on want to compete at a high level, you can, but we're going to play this for the young guys. I don't know what the right answer is, and I'm not a coach. Coaches generally lean into, we want to play as long as possible, but I'm not sure there's a part of this coaching staff that's like, okay, after Kansas and what we saw from our own players, It's time to move on.
Hey, wait, hold on just a second, Finch. I always agree with you. Most of the time I agree. You're a right-thinking American, and I agree with you most of the time. You're wrong on this, baby. You are totally wrong. If you're going to play in the NIT, go win it. Go win it. Go get the trophy. Go get the ring that says NIT champions. They'll get rings. It'll say NIT champ, and it'll mean something. It'll mean something to this team. It'll mean something to the community. It'll mean something to K-State Nation. Now, it's not the NCAA, but if you're going to go win it. Fitz, go win it.
This team in the NIT, with what we saw the other night, would lose to Rhode Island. I mean,
oh, my gosh.
Rhode Island is.
Jiminy Christmas.
I mean, right now, this team is folding up. But again, Saturday can change the context of everything. They come out and look inspired and play well and prove to Coach Tang that, we're going to play whatever we can. They've been working really hard. They started too late. I want to say that with this, let's get Tyler Perry to the NCAA because Tyler Perry has that NIT ring. He has hoisted that trophy just last year with North Texas, and it doesn't have the same value to him. Been there, done that. He wanted the big show. This team's a mess, and I don't mean that in terms of the quality of kids or anything. They're just not there in the right mental or physical space.
Well, and remember, I mean, we're talking about a team that anticipated having both Naquan Tomlin and Quez Glover on that roster and in that lineup, and they don't have either one of them. And those are two, potential playmakers for Jerome Tang. I will say, if there is any coach in America that you would think could get his team up and inspired, especially for a must-win game at home, the final regular season game inside Bramlage, it would be Jerome Tang. I wonder, and so I want to clarify on your thoughts on this, Fitz. Do you think that there is a chance if the Wildcats get an invite to the NIT that Jerome Tang could turn that invite down?
Yeah, Jerome wouldn't turn it down. Maybe the players would.
Okay.
I come to this point. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, I think if you're a player, you want to play. Yeah. Even if you're not playing well, let's try to go reset again. Let's try to reset again.
Correct. That's right.
So I don't think they'll turn down the bid, but I don't think from the fan base, I don't think anyone will be upset if they're not in the NIT.
So I want to look into this must-win game on Saturday inside Bramlage, and Iowa State, they've got a lot to play for too, because they're still in the hunt for a Big 12 championship. It would take the Jayhawks upsetting Houston on the road and then Iowa State winning inside Bramlage. But it's not like Iowa State, doesn't have anything to play for. They certainly will probably come in inspired as well, and they're working on their seeding for the Big 12 tournament and, what line they'll be in for the NCAA tournament. You mentioned the mess that this Kansas State team is right now. What are some things that you think Jerome Tang is looking at? And I know effort is probably at the very top of the list, but what are some specific things in your mind that they're going to have to do a better job at inside Bramlage on Saturday?
It's going to come down to a lot of effort. Because when I watch Iowa State play, I get back to this. Every good team needs to have that alpha leader that kind of takes over. And also some dogs. Some guys that just got, I'm going to break my teeth diving for this loose ball. I don't care. That really mix it up and we'll get a little overly physical. And Iowa State brings that to the table. They get after you, man. This is a fun Iowa State team. They're doing it the right way. And I guess if you're K-State, your hope is the players on their home court with a home crowd and the students will respond in kind and play that way back. Go back to the KU game in Manhattan. The team matched the energy and got after it for most of the game. And I guess if you're Jerome Tang, that's what you're hoping, is that Iowa State comes in and gives you that. If Iowa State comes in and mopes around and it's kind of a boring, one of those, we've seen those games. Neither team's playing that well. And then Iowa State flips it on at the end, K-State loses. But if Iowa State comes out and K-State matches that energy and you have a really high-energy game, man, this is a real opportunity for K-State to win. But I love this Iowa State team. I think this Iowa State team is kind of what Jerome Tang was hoping to have in year two. But as you mentioned, he lost out on some key pieces. in recruiting, and then he's had some just really horrendous luck, and and his president shot him in the foot with a really silly decision that I still can't fully explain. So here we are. That's the reality you have to deal with, and now we'll see if they respond by matching Iowa State's energy and effort.
One more thing before we let you go, Fitz. I know in the past weeks we've talked a lot about college football and the expansion with the 12-team playoff, and you're looking at a 14-team playoff. But in the headlines this week, it's been all about NCAA tournament basketball expansion. And I know there's a ton of different proposals on the table to expand the field in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s. Where do you land on this? Is this a necessary thing for college basketball to expand the NCAA tournament field?
Here's where I lie on this. I want to de-expand the tournament to 64.
Okay.
I guess it's tolerable, but only tolerable to me if they go to 72, and the first four becomes whatever catching name you want. But I would want that to involve no 16 seed. I truly believe those schools belong in the main bracket.
Yeah.
You have an automatic bid. Put them in the main bracket. Now, I also understand they don't mind playing that 16-on-16 playing game because they get a win in the NCAA tournament, which is substantial for this program. So I understand their point. But I would love for that first 4, 8, whatever those games are, to be matchups of teams that have to play their way into the main bracket, the 12 seeds. The last schools in and as at-large bids. I'll accept that. But I also don't want to count that as being in the NCAA tournament bracket. I don't think the first four is the bracket. I get mad when you count that, particularly if you're a Power 6 school. I count that as a win. We won a game in the NCAA tournament. You won in Dayton. Nothing remarkable in life ever happens in Dayton. You go in the first round of the tournament at 64 and win a game.
You know what's interesting? I was thinking back to, I don't know how many years we've had the first four, maybe close to a decade now, probably it's been going on. And I can maybe count on one hand the number of first four games that I've really gotten into. And I want to get into all of them. I have them all on TV because I'm ready for March Madness. And then I'm watching, Texas A&M Commerce taking on, some school that I've never heard of before, so it
existed. Yeah.
And so I always want it to be a lot more than it actually is. And it never really pans out that way.
I know. And what's interesting about it is here's the good thing. I'm going to say something nice about the first four. Oh, what it hurts. It turns UCLA into an underdog. Think about that.
Yeah.
Because remember a couple of years ago when UCLA came out of Dayton and started doing damage and going through the tournament, I can't remember how far they went. They went a long way.
Right.
They were the Final Four that year?
At least the Elite Eight, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They turned UCLA into an underdog.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cool thing. And that doesn't include the 16-on-16 matchups you just mentioned. Again, put those schools in the bracket. They won their leagues.
Yeah.
Play the teams that got to earn their way in. But if I'm an opposing coach, I don't want to be in a 12-5 game with a team that just got a win and it's feeling good and, feeling like they just conquered the world because they won in Dayton. Well, I'm sorry if you're from Dayton and I'm hosing them.
We're going to start getting angry
there you
hate
go.
Mail from Dayton.
While we're talking,
your Dayton listenership is gone.
Yeah, there you go. Well, while we're talking about number of teams, there's this talk about 14 teams taking the football playoffs from 12 to 14 and giving the Big Ten and the SEC a bye. Just those two. No one else. Just those two. What do you think of that? Because I think that idea sucks.
It's ridiculous. Those conferences are basically admitting we're afraid to compete.
Mm-hmm.
What if you show the college football world you can beat us? We need to buy. Can you imagine the NCAA tournament saying, "Hey, we're going to add more teams, but we're just going to give the Power 6 schools buys into the round of 32." That's what we're talking about here. It doesn't make sense. This is really, Tommy, you know me. I'm into the conspiracy theories. I think those two conferences want to be so obnoxious in their demands that they can blame the Big 12, the ACC, and anyone else who's left for blowing up the playoff. They want to break off and do their own thing. They're looking for a reason. You're being absurd with your demands that we not have the buys. They're going to try to make everything sound like it's the other conferences that are the problem, not them, and they must go do their own thing now. I come back to this. When they're demanding a number of the buys and reserve spots in the playoff, why are you afraid to prove it on the field? Go schedule a bunch of Big 12 teams in a non-conference and show you're better. But they know that may not be the result. You don't have to go back very many years to watch how the ACC killed the SEC in the non-conference. And yet the national media still said the SEC was better. And from top to bottom, that's the measurement that counts. And from top to bottom, these conferences aren't overly better than the Big 12 or, I want to say the ACC, but they were pretty bad this year. So I'm kind of just laughing at this because this is such a political, selfish play by these two conferences. It's a money grab, disgusting. And right now, ESPN, Fox, and these two conferences don't really care if they blow up college football as long as they get theirs.
Well, one thing's for sure about both college football and college basketball, right? When you think that, things are probably going to be settled down for a little while, it never really ends up that way. So we may be seeing even more expansion in both of those sports. And for the Wildcats, it starts on Saturday at home in Bramlage, taking on Iowa State in Farmageddon, the final regular season game. And they've got to have it if they want any shot at an NCAA tournament berth. Fitz, anything big going on at gopowercat.com to let people know about?
Well, we went into a podcasting frenzy yesterday. So if you like podcasting or video or audio, they're both now. We did a basketball one that's already up. I guess the first of the two footballs released it early this morning, and then we got another one popping out tomorrow. Now, I did 3 podcasts in my studio last night, and I'm like, what am I doing? By the end of the third one, I was a little bit loopy. I don't know how you guys do like 3-4 hours of radio. By hour 2, I'd be just an idiot just talking about anything because my ADD would kick in.
Yeah, we are.
We got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're both
we
idiots.
got a lot of stuff going on.
It's true. Well,
go
ahead.
Go check out Go Power Cat.
All right.
Yeah, and by the way, those podcasts you can find on the free Odyssey app. You can go on there and listen to them at any time. Fitz, we appreciate it. And again, if you were here, I were there, I would give you a pretty long handshake just to say thanks for being on the show this week.
I'd probably put a hand on your butt.
Okay. On that note, we'll let you go. And we'll talk to you next week, Fitz.
Oh, my gosh.
Tim Fitzgerald, gopowercat.com, joining us here on Sports Daily. I'm gonna have to take a break here just to
take a break,
get that out of my mind. After the break, we're going to talk more about Wichita State. They've got a pretty big game tomorrow night on the road to wrap up their regular season as it relates to seeding in the American tournament next week. We'll get into that on the other side. I'm Tommy Castor along with Paul Savage and Jad Chambers. Sports Daily coming right back.
Welcome back to Cafe. This is Sports Daily. Paul Savage here. Tommy will join us in a second. Well, I'll tell you what, that was a very, very interesting conversation with Tim Fitzgerald. And boy, he just tells you like it is. It's amazing the job he does. He is a great asset to K-State University. Tommy, you and I were both talking about how much we really enjoy those segments we have with Fitz.
Well, what I like about it, and we talked about it off air, is just, he's unfiltered. He's going to give you his opinion on all of that. And so that's good. The fact that he's able to bring that to the table. And it is going to be extremely interesting the way that the next week plays out for the Wildcats, and knowing sort of the issues and the struggles that are at the forefront right now for that program. I said it before, if any coach can get it turned around, it's Jerome Tang, with the way that he inspires young men. So it all starts with Saturday. We're going to talk to Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Wildcats, tomorrow here on the program for our weekly interview, and see what his mindset is going into the final regular season weekend and then into the Big 12 tournament. Let's talk a little Shockers, Paul. We haven't spent any time here on the program with Wichita State today. They've got a game tomorrow night, their final regular season game in the American Conference, on the road at Tulane. They have not played Tulane so far this season, and we're not talking about a team that Obviously with the struggles they've had, there's really not going to be any postseason play for Wichita State unless they win the American Conference tournament. That's going to obviously be easier said than done, but there is a scenario, and Taylor Eldridge, our buddy from the Wichita Eagle, laid out a scenario on social media yesterday where Wichita State could find themselves out of that first round. And I believe that starts on Tuesday night for the American Conference tournament. If a couple things happen, first off, they've got to win against Tulane on the road tomorrow night. Then after that, they've got to have a couple of different things happen. They've got to have Tulsa lose against South Florida. They've got to have UTSA win against Temple. They can, basically, if they can get that win on the road, there could be a scenario where they don't have to play that opening round. And that could be essential, I think, for the Shockers, Paul.
Well, it is essential. And this is a team that we've seen, I think, get better. I mean, better is a relative term that I'm going to use. But this is a team that it would seem to me wants to play some more games. They want to play all the games they can because they are incrementally gotten a little bit better. I said a little bit, not a ton, but it's I don't know what the mindset of this team is, but I think this is a team that has won 2 of the last or 3 of the last 4 games. Come on, is this a time you want to stop playing? So you want to,
yeah. Well, because and as we talked about multiple times throughout the season, it's a Shocker team that we've seen game in and game out hang with the top tier opponents in the conference. They did it twice with Memphis. They did it with Florida Atlantic. They haven't won those games, but they've at least played them tight. Mm-hmm. And in a couple of cases, it's taken big time comebacks from their opponents to win the games. So I think a tournament scenario, a win or go home scenario for Wichita State, I think it could benefit them. And if they can find their way out of the bottom 4 seeds, then that's going to make them one step closer to having that become a reality.
Yeah.
They 100%, we know if they lose on the road tomorrow night to Tulane, they will be in the bottom 4.
Right.
They will have to play in that opening round.
Right. You're Wichita State. You got 5 conference wins. 5.
Right.
But 3 have been in the last 4. The 3 have been in the last 4 games.
They're heating
I
up.
want to play.
They're improving.
I want to play. I feel like we're getting better. We're getting some success.
Trending upwards.
Trending upwards.
Yep.
Well said, my
they're
friend.
They're shooting the ball better.
And they're doing a lot of things better they're even defending better. I mean, you look at the score totals on some of these games, you're in the low 60s. I mean, that's where you want to be. You want to be in the 50s, but you can't be in the 50s defending all the time. This is still, Division I college basketball. So this is a team trending up. If I'm a Shocker, now I'm observing, but if I'm on that team, I want to keep playing. I like the taste of winning. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. We've got 5 wins in the conference. So I think we're 5-12 overall. Mm-hmm. We're getting better. 3 wins out of those 5 have been out of the last 4 games. I want to play. Now that's just me, but I think that, if you're an athlete and a competitor, I'm sure that's probably the sentiment of this team. And you want to know something? If you got a play-in game, why not? Because it just gives you another game to go play.
It does.
Now that's the way that's a crazy way to look at it, but I'm not so sure that.
This has also been a team that this season has, at least in conference play, struggled against teams that they are objectively better than. Where in the metrics, looking at the net rankings and things like that, in some cases they've played down to their competition.
You're right.
And so I would rather them not have to play in that play-in game round. But it starts on Friday. And I guarantee you, Paul, that everything that you just said as far as the motivation are things that Paul Mills has been telling his team all week long. You're trending up. You're shooting the ball better. You're getting after it. The effort is better. You're going for loose balls. You're grabbing rebounds, things like that at a better clip than you were doing it a month ago, 2 months ago, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Let's keep this going. Let's see where it takes us. Is it likely Wichita State will win the conference tournament? No, it's not. At the end of the day, they're going to probably come up against a team like South Florida, who's one of the hottest teams maybe the hottest team in the conference, or they'll come up against a team like Florida Atlantic that, maybe they've not played at the same level that they played last year, but they're still a really talented veteran team with a really good head coach in Dusty May. They could run up against a team like Memphis, where I know the bottom's kind of fallen out for them. but they've still got a boatload of talent.
They do have
on
talent.
that roster.
That is right.
So is it likely? Probably not. But if it's a win or go home scenario, you have to view tomorrow night's game on the road at Tulane as a win or go home mentality also.
But you know something, Tommy? I'm paying attention now.
Sure.
I'm paying attention to the Shockers in this tournament. Now, once the Shockers are finished with this tournament, I don't have a ton of interest. My interest will then refocus on, the Big 12. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, that's where my interest lies right now. I've got 3 teams that I care about in the Big 12, K-State, KU, and Baylor. I've got 3 teams. I'm a lucky guy. I got 3 teams I like and follow. But with that being said, with the Shockers, you know something, man, I think this is great. I think it's really the first positive stuff that we've been able to say, come on, Shockers, play every game you can.
Yep.
Take it as far as you can. Can you win it all? Probably not. But you want to know something? I like the effort. The effort's there. The effort is better than it's been. Go for it, Shockers.
Utilize this conference tournament. Utilize this conference tournament with the mindset that you're playing in the NCAA tournament.
Bingo.
It's a single elimination tournament,
right.
And your season is over if and when you lose.
I like the way you think.
And it starts tomorrow night on the road against Tulane. Here's the bottom line, really, and credit to Taylor Eldridge for laying all this out. If Temple loses, Wichita State gets out of that bottom 4. If Temple loses against UAB, Wichita State has to win. They've got to win at Tulane. They've got the tiebreakers in a lot of those cases. Then the question becomes, will it be the 9 seed or the 10 seed? But they've got to win, and they've got to have Temple lose, and they get out of that bottom 4. So that's really those are the stakes. That's really where it comes down to tomorrow night. And, of course, we'll have coverage of that game over on KEYN tomorrow evening on the road with Mike Kennedy. Looking forward to the call of that game. On our way out, want to mention our friends over at Prairie Fire Marathon, Prairie Fire Coffee. Paul and I have been drinking our Prairie Fire coffee all morning long here. Appreciate them keeping us hydrated and caffeinated each and every morning here on Sports Daily. We'll step aside for a timeout. We'll be right back. It's Sports Daily on KFH.
.97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Save big money on your fencing projects now at Menards. Add privacy and security to your home with AC2 pressure-treated pre-assembled wood fence panels. They're pressure-treated to protect from the elements and are pre-assembled for fast and easy installation. Plus, you can get free estimates fast with our fencing design programs in store and on Menards.com. Explore all of our fencing options and check out more of our great deals going on now at Menards.
Save big money at Menards.
Tax season is here. Are your forms, calculations, and stress piling up? Take charge of your tax situation today by going with Market Tax Services. Our team of CPAs and enrolled agents are ready to help you manage your documents, returns, deductions, and more at our downtown or West Wichita offices for your convenience. Market Tax Services is here for all your tax needs. We look forward to meeting with you. Call us today at 316-803-1040 or learn more at markettaxservices.com.
Toppers Plus Truck and RV will hook you up for trailer and RV season. Get receiver hitches, goosenecks, fifth wheel hitches, brake controllers, and trailer wiring to ease the towing of your boat, cycle, RV, or lawn equipment. Choose from top brands of hitches, including B&W hitches, Kurt, and draw type. Need to take your vehicle camping with you? Toppers Plus has Blue Ox base plates and tow bars. Get trailer season ready at Toppers Plus Truck and RV, 333 Northwest Street, or toppersplusks.com.
Make the truck work for you.
On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law.
It's Girl Scout cookie time, which means it's leprechaun shake time at Spangles.
The leprechaun shake, made with Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies and topped with whipped cream.
Whatever leprechaun shake you buy, support your local Girl Scout. So buy a lot.
Hi, I'm Renee Stevens, Director of Operations for Spangles Restaurants. Did you know that Spangles now starts all employees at $12 an hour? Whether it's full-time, part-time, breakfast, lunch, or dinner shifts, we have something for everyone. So you can start at any Spangles and get paid $12 an hour for your first hour and every hour after that. Come join our team, stop by any Spangles, and pick up an application. And let's get you started on your new career today.
Freshness made to order. Spangles, it just tastes better.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-700-6898. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Provider has helped thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-700-6898. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-700-6898. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-700-6898. 800-700-6898 or biglou.com.
No 2 feet are alike. No 2 environments are alike. And no 2 styles are alike, which can make selecting purpose-built footwear a challenge for most. That's why the experts at Red Wing Shoe Store are here to give you a professional fit experience. As certified product and fit specialists, our trained staff are uniquely qualified to address the challenges people experience when looking for the right fit. Get the ultimate fit today at Red Wing Shoes. For a free fit analysis, visit Red Wing Shoes at 6600 West Kellogg.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car right in your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
To thank you for 40 unforgettable years, Dell Technologies is celebrating an anniversary savings on the most popular tech. For a limited time only, save on select next-gen PCs like the XPS 13 Plus, powered by Intel Core processors and more. Plus, curate your dream setup with great deals on select monitors, mice, and more must-have electronics and accessories. When you shop online at Dell.com/deals, you'll have access to leading-edge technology and free shipping on everything. Again, that's Dell.com/deals.
It's time to get back to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go!
Sports Daily is on KFH.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on a Thursday here on KFH. The KFH hotline open for a few more minutes, 869-1240. Having fun on a Thursday here. Tommy Castor and Paul Savage with you. Some news that I think is interesting, to say the least, that came out today. We don't ever talk boxing on this show.
Not very often.
But there was some boxing news today. A big-time fight is scheduled between 57-year-old Mike Tyson and I guess you can call him an influencer, Jake Paul, who's probably around 30. I don't really know Jake Paul's official age. Quite a bit younger than Mike Tyson. Paul is a YouTuber, and now he's a prize fighter. He's going to take on the former heavyweight champ, Mike Tyson. It's going to be live on Netflix in July. July 20th is the date. And it's, interesting. I really was never thinking that these two guys would get into a ring together, but I would imagine it's going to have a lot of views.
Jake Paul better watch out for his ears.
Well, that's very true.
I can't believe you said that, but but I get the point. Well, the interesting thing about this is that, this has money written all over it. This is
for sure.
If ever you had a made for TV event, this would be it. And and I guess the question is, Tommy, and even to you, Jed, would either one of you guys pay to watch Mike Tyson fight at age 57?
I think I would.
Oh,
I think I would watch
I
this.
did not expect that from you.
I
did not see that coming.
And I think it's because it's more of a spectacle than anything else. It's not like it's, I don't know if I would watch Mike Tyson fight for a heavyweight championship at his age, but in something like this, Jake Paul, by the way, is 27. Mike Tyson will be 58 by the time this fight actually happens. So we're talking about 30 years of an age gap between these two. I think the other reason why I would probably watch this is because this is going to be the first time ever, guys, where Netflix will have a live sporting event. And so just for that reason, I kind of want to watch it and see what that looks like.
Well, the one thing about Netflix having live sporting events that I'm kind of unsure about is the beauty of Netflix has nothing to do with anything being live. The beauty of Netflix is you can watch it anytime you want on your own schedule. That's been one of the highlights of it since the beginning. I already get Netflix, so technically I'm already paying for this. So will I watch it? Maybe. Probably not live though. I'll watch it, when I get time.
Well, and I wonder, and I'm reading the articles about it. It doesn't say anywhere about whether or not this will be a pay-per-view type thing on Netflix that you have to pay extra for, or if your subscription gets you access to it. And I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine. I mean, think about the playoff game in the NFL that was on Peacock, exclusively on Peacock. It wasn't a premium. If you had a Peacock subscription, you got to watch that game, and it increased subscriptions exponentially for that platform.
Well,
so I wonder if that's the same way with Netflix. I don't know.
No,
it may or may not be. I have a Peacock subscription. I do not have the premium one, paid for it, so I didn't get that.
Okay.
So that was a premium content type of thing. Whereas Netflix I already pay for. If I had to pay more, I definitely wouldn't. Sure.
Yeah. And that set records, by the way. I mean, Peacock said, the amount of money, the amount of subscriptions or the licenses to watch the show sold was incredible. It set like a record. I'm kind of sad about that because now we're seeing the future. I mean, we're going to see. They think they can charge us anything and anytime, anywhere, any amount, and we're willing to do it. The public, the sporting public, let me narrow that down a little bit. We'll buy anything.
Yeah.
We'll even buy Jake Paul and Mike Tyson.
Well,
won't we?
I mean, I'll incriminate myself here for a second. I watched the Peacock playoff game, obviously, because it was the Chiefs.
Right.
I found somebody who had a subscription and I used their credentials. I'm not going to lie about it. I did not subscribe to Peacock. I am not a Peacock subscriber. If it gets to the point to where it's something that is an ongoing thing, I might have to bite the bullet. But for a one-off game, I wasn't going to do that. So hopefully nobody's listening to that can, walk me away.
I guarantee you it'll happen again. The success was so great for Peacock. It's going to happen again. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, and now it's happening with Netflix for a boxing match. The one of the all-time greats, Mike Tyson.
One of the greats.
Taking on the up-and-comer and the YouTuber, Jake Paul, July 20th on Netflix. Should be a really interesting bout to see how that all plays out. We're going to take our final time out of the show. When we come back, we'll tell you what's on the network next on Sports Daily.
Something bad has happened to Mom.
Streaming March 14th on Peacock.
Join.
Well, heard Ted mention it there in the sports update. Congratulations to the Wichita Thunder trying to make that last-minute playoff push with a big 7-1 win against the Tulsa Oilers at home last night. Pretty impressive for them.
Let's
so congratulations.
Yeah.
On the network today, Jim Rome follows us at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Zach Gelb at 4, JR Sport Brief at 6, a normal day of programming until the Jerome Tang radio show tonight at 7 o'clock, talking K-State basketball right here on KFH. Tomorrow, Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Wildcats, joins us here on Sports Daily. Paul, we'll see you then. Have a great day.
Yeah, same to you, my friend.
For Jad Chambers and Paul Savage, I'm Tommy Castor. Have a great day. We'll see you back here on a Friday.